Championship football is back following the first international break. So, with that, Stoke travelled to take on Oxford United. So, with that, in today's match preview, I am joined by the one and only it's Ben Rowley. Ben, how are you doing?
Well, thank you very much. That first take on the intro.
Oh,
So
well,
I know we were a bit worried about it before, but you nailed that, mate.
I
So
don't know. I
well
don't know
done.
how I
Yes,
put it.
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Of course, we've had the first international breaks here, which is always one of them where why is it so early in this season? No team builds any momentum. But with that, Stoke have had quite a balanced start to the season. I must admit. Of course, 6 games played, 4 wins, 2 coming in the league, 2 coming in the cup, and then of course the 2 losses. How would you rate Stoke's start to the season?
Um, it's been all right, isn't it? Really, I think we've shown both sides of the game that we have seen for the last 6 or 7 years. To be honest, we've seen that we can be a really good team. Perhaps more often than not this season, which is a good start. Winning 4 out of 6 is obviously a really good start. Um, good attacking football, particularly against like Middlesbrough, Plymouth.
Hmm.
Thought we played some good stuff against the first half of Coventry as well. Um, I, I've just had fun watching us, more fun than I have for a long, long time. Um, we look relatively solid at the back most of the time. There are just lapses, and I think every time we've had a big lapse, it sort of cost us. So the 2 lapses against West Brom and well, we had a few lapses against Watford, of course, and it's cost us every time. Some smashing finishes from them, but there is still no room for error at Stoke.
Hmm.
Um, every time we make a mistake, we seem to concede a goal. It seems to be a catastrophe. So that's one side of the game we need to improve on. But hey, on the whole, it's probably been a better start to the season that I can remember for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that, I think what one of the things that I don't know if I do it every season, and I probably said it last season under Alex Neil, it was like, oh, I think we had quite a similar start to the season, something like obviously getting the wins in, and it felt like something different with Vidigal, obviously having that start to the season he did, and then you go, oh, it kind of peters out, and that kind of hype and the hope in a way, you kind of go, oh, is it another mediocre season? Which of course we've had in the 6 times in the championship. So when I'm looking at it, and I think a lot of people have said this, it's more you judge them 10 games in. So obviously, in a way, including the cup, you obviously say we've already had 6 games. Probably the next international break, we get a good idea for how Stoke are doing. But with that, I think there is a difference this year. And is it me being optimistic again? Is it just is there that genuinely something different coming this year? For me, I do think there is. Whether that's a top half finish, whether that's obviously higher, but I think even a top half finish is absolutely 100% improvement from the obviously 6 seasons we've had where there's been no improvement. But also, there's obviously something different that's going on behind closed doors and in terms of obviously the signings we've made. But I think obviously heading into the international break, for me, there was quite a few standouts from obviously the cup games and the league games that we've had. Looking at obviously the players we've had a lot of quality on paper. Who's your kind of 2 or 3 standouts from the kind of games we've had in both the league and the cup?
Um, for me, the best performer has been Million Man Hoof, I would say. Over the course of the last week, he's just how we managed to get him. It was lucky, wasn't it? Because the tests were in financial difficulties, and I think
Mm,
he helped keep us up last season, and he's carried on that form into this season. And he looks a lot stronger. He looks a lot faster. He's clearly not afraid to have a pop at goal. Had what was it, 5 shots on target against Argyle? So
yeah,
yeah, brimming with confidence, and he's that sort of player that needs it. But will help out on the return as well. Helping out Shamadou, and hopefully they can form a bit of a partnership going forward. Lewis Kumas is obviously very exciting as a lone
mm,
player. I can't imagine too many teams in the Championship having seen him over the last few games would turn him down. Very direct.
yeah,
His runs are so intelligent. Um, in a way that I don't think ever seen a Stoke player have. the way that he plays on the shoulder and just has that natural finishing ability. He doesn't always score, but he's not had a blazing miss, has he, from memory?
No,
So
not really. No.
he looks to be quite clinical. Um, but perhaps my I say favorite. I really like Eric Bocat. I
Mm,
think, we've not signed a left back for money for a long, long time. Um, and he just looks everything that Hoover and Chamadou do on the other side, or did in Hoover's case, of course. He's quick, he's attacking, he can put a good ball in. He's got a bit of skill on him. He's all right defensively, and I think that's
yeah.
possibly where even he would admit he can improve. I think he was a winger in a past life, wasn't he? So, but he's just so much fun. Having seen some plodders at left back for the last 6 or 7 years, whether they be centre backs, whether they just be aging left backs, it's going to be nice to have someone who I think we could probably rely on pretty much every week now.
Yeah, and I think with that, with Eric Bocat, one of the early signings that we made this season, obviously we brought in Johansson, Gibson, and Bocat all in kind of that early point of the summer window, and then there wasn't too much going on until obviously the later period. But I think Bocat then brings you that option. Obviously, I don't know if I think they have said Stevens it is close for the game against Oxford, whether he's in contention, I don't know. But I think Bocat then gives you that kind of tactical side to the game of if say the Plymouth one where they're going to have some good wingers where like Morgan Whitaker, Bocat went man for man with him and then provides you that option of say we did have Stevens available, right, let's shut up shop, let's get that experience at the back and see the game through. I think that's so much of what we needed that we don't have to rely on obviously experienced players that like Stevens who obviously got injured. If he then got injured and we didn't have Bocat, then you'd be going, oh, why have we not brought someone in? So I completely agree. I do like Bocat, and hopefully he can kind of like he did against Borough. Do you know that cross that he did to Kumas, that absolute superb ball? I think stuff like that. Hopefully we see more of. And I think him bringing both that kind of attacking sense and maybe a more kind of defensive minded part to his game as well in terms of kind of 1v1s against wingers, then he could be a real top signing. But I know we mentioned Manu and Kumas, who I must admit a real big fan of as well. I must admit, Victor Johansson is one of them that even at the start of, say, like when it was pre-season and all that lot, looking at it, I was going, you know what? I really do think there's something different that we haven't had with kind of past goalkeepers. And I think one thing we needed to do that was what obviously we kind of got the negative out of last season was obviously brought two goalkeepers in on loan, and obviously Travers obviously getting sent back to Bournemouth. So obviously then we were left in a bit of the dirt. So I think Johansson bringing him in on a permanent was a top signing, and I think sometimes in the Championship where you don't really deserve to win the game, but your keeper's kept you in it, and you've gone. "Oh, if you want to net, I feel like he's that type of goalkeeper that's going to do us this season. And I think the Borough game, I must admit, even though of course we won 5-0, there was some top saves in that first half that you go, you know what? If he doesn't save them, it could have been 3-0 to Borough and they progressed in the cup. So I think I think he's got a lot more to come from him as well. And I hope more praise comes his way because I've seen obviously a few little things about obviously when he's a confident keeper, some fans obviously won't really like that. They want a keeper that stays in his box or whatever. But for me, I do quite like Victor Johansson. I don't know about you, Ben, but I'm quite a big fan, and I think obviously a lot of Rotherham fans are as well of Victor Johansson.
Yeah, massive fan. I know he's not had the best start, and I think it is that confidence, borderline arrogance has cost him a little bit. I mean, he does seem to stray quite far off his line, and he's inevitably going to get that wrong a couple of times. He's still a relatively young goalkeeper, so he will only improve in that regard as well. His judgment will get better over
Mm.
time. But you think about the goalkeepers we've had over the last, again, I repeat, 6 or 7 years. You're talking about Butland, Davis, um, even Angus Gunn, uh, Bonham, Bursic, list goes on of
Yeah, yeah,
goalkeepers who weren't all that confident in themselves. And we're thinking, hell, if I make a mistake here, I'm out of this team. And they
yeah,
were a lot of the time. Whereas you can see Johansson, not only is he confident in himself, but he's aggressive in the way he plays. He's not afraid to get hurt. He's not afraid to, punch the ball away from a crowded box, which is what we've needed for a long time. Um, and if he makes a mistake, I don't think he will lose his head. I think he'll keep his confidence and
yeah,
he won't be dropped. I can't see him being dropped. I think we've seen, well, if anyone has seen the clips of him this week of him playing for Sweden,
yeah,
phenomenal set of saves this week, and then kept his first clean sheet, I think, the other day as well. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's really good to have a good, competent goalkeeper who may make mistakes, but I think over the course of the season will save many, many, many more points than he would have cost us.
Yeah, and I think with that, obviously, as we mentioned about obviously the past 6 seasons we've had in the championship, all looking down at relegation instead of anywhere near playoffs. Points that obviously teams that get the points in the championship that are right in the playoff that you go, hang on, they're not that better than Stoke, but the 10 points ahead of us. Sometimes they just dig out them results and get that point or get them 3 points from absolutely nothing. Whereas it felt like with Stoke, we never really went on that kind of consistent form of picking up points week in and week out, even if we didn't deserve it. So I do think having a player like Victor Johansson, who is obviously so confident and not afraid to come out of his box, but also brings out some real top draw saves, I think could then give us them points that obviously get us further away from relegation, further away from the positions we've been in the league before. So obviously, him being one of the 10 transfers we've made over this summer, I think we've made some top signings. And for me, it was a tough one in terms of rating our summer window, because you don't know how these players are going to do. They might get injured, and that then kind of takes away the kind of priority of why we brought him in. But for me, I'm going to say that in terms of rating Stoke's transfer window, I'll give it. I'm lingering between an 8.5 and a 9, and for me that could be too high, and that might be too optimistic and saying, well, hang on, Sam, they haven't proved their worth at all yet in terms of signings that we brought in, and like say Tom Cannon, Seko as well, haven't played a game yet. But I think the way in which Stoke went about this summer window, and I don't know about you, Ben, but I quite liked it. I think obviously at times there was points where it was a little bit quiet, and you go, hang on, there's 3 or 4 positions that need to be filled. But you look at it overall in terms of what we ended up with, them 10 new signings, I think it was really solid. I think there's a good mixture. And I think the kind of age of them signings, Kumas, Phillips, Cannon, Moran, Lowell, all young lads, all in and around my age, which made me feel like, oh gosh, I've got a dad bod, and these are playing for Stoke. I know which one I prefer, but I think in terms of this window, I think it's been really solid, and I hope that kind of then reflect on the pitch. But yeah, how would you rate Stoke's transfer window?
I think I'd have said a 9 out of 10 as well, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think I said so on social media the other week. We seem to have had a lot of control of what's happening this window over the players that we've signed. It seems like pretty much every target that we've been after, we have got.
yeah,
Tom Cannon's a big one. Johansson's a big one. Getting someone like Moran, even though we perhaps didn't get Condell, maybe he was our first choice. Maybe we
mm,
look about going in for him, but someone like Moran's a great replacement. Lewis Kumas, I imagine there was a bit of a queue for him as well.
yeah,
Um, and then in terms of who we let go, I like Lewis Bacon, I like Josh Laurent, but they were approaching the final years of their contract. They were entering their 30s. And perhaps over the last 2 or 3 years, it's that sort of player we now need to move on, because look at what that sort of player has left us in over the last couple of years. So
yeah,
they, they've gone. Players like Tyrese Campbell, it seems like was a Stoke decision to let go. Daniel Johnson was certainly a mutual agreement that just
mm,
wasn't going to work out after Alex Neil left. Ryan Meyer's unfortunate, but again, I don't know whether he's left more so. He may be, for example, our second, third choice striker, but he just wants to be first choice for minutes. I think
Yeah.
there's certainly players, strikers in the team who are below in the pecking order than him, but I think it's right for Maya to go out and get some games. Um, but then who we've kept as well. You think we've managed to keep Berger, Manhuff, and Juno. Like, who would have expected that we'd be able to keep all of them despite the interest that they've had?
Mm.
Um, and bring in the players that we brought in. You would have thought maybe that, a Tom Cannon, for example, would have only been able to come in had we had some incoming money the other way. Um, but the squad's really stacked. We've got pretty much two players for every position, as far as I'm aware. There's not much dead wood in the squad, and even then, I think some of those players could be revived over the course of the season.
Yeah.
There's potential there. It's not as if they're, you know, dead wood in their 30s, for example, but they've still got their best yet to come. Uh, I think Stoke have gone about it with a lot of control, and I think they'll be very happy. You, of course, as you said, cannot judge signings too early based on their performances. For us, you can only base it off their profile of age and how they played in the past and how we think that they'll fit our team. I think we've seen that the players that we brought in fit how Schumacher wants to play. So top draw. I've been quietly impressed. The quiet periods, of course, were a bit scary, but actually, when you think about it, having a quiet period in the transfer window, Stoke were clearly working behind the scenes
Yeah.
constantly to get all those deals done. To keep those deals private is another thing, and not let Ashley Phillips pretty much came out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Is it? Is it Ashley? His name is Ashley, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. He
That's
said
bad,
this.
isn't it? He came out of nowhere, for example, but came on later in the window. You would have thought there would have been interest recorded earlier on in the
Mm.
window, for example. So it's good that Stoke aren't at the forefront of the press because we've seen with players like Tom Cannon, other clubs will get linked and will try and join the fight. So yeah, I think we've handled ourselves very well.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot to even mention the outgoings. Obviously, even when was it, about a week ago, maybe even less, when Ryan Mai left on loan, which you obviously touched on, played in played in the Plymouth game. In all fairness, um, started up front, and then it looked like towards the second half, he kind of dropped in behind, and Kumas led the line. So it's one of them where if it's obviously not going to work out, and obviously if he wants first team football in terms of starting week in and week out, and we brought in a Tom Cannon who, even being on loan, you then go, right, he's probably got an agreement there that he has to start a certain amount of games, or something like that, where he's then guaranteed game time. And I think him leading the line, hopefully, it is a fantastic signing, and hopefully he can kick on and get the numbers up. So obviously, looking into this one, the game against Oxford, I didn't actually realise how close it was between the two. We both won and lost twice. Oxford, of course, in ninth, and Stoke in 11th, both with 6 points. And something that's even odder in terms of this game, both teams have won their first game of the season. Of course, Stoke winning against Coventry, and then of course Oxford winning against Norwich. I watched that game; that was a good game. That, and then they didn't win their two away games. Of course, Stoke losing theirs, and then of course the final game before the international break, Oxford winning that one this time against Preston. So both teams a very similar start to the season, but of course Stoke kicking on in the Carabao Cup, building a little bit of momentum from that. It's so difficult, especially when there's an international break, where not that we built too much momentum, but there's a little bit of a spark there of, what, these players are playing with confidence. Hopefully they can continue that. Obviously, the international break comes. Hopefully, no one gets injured. Of course, I think Wales are playing tonight. When this is being recorded, you obviously got Phillips, who's also, I think he's playing tomorrow as well. All play like a lot of players called up internationally, so hopefully they can obviously keep their momentum, but also not get injured. In terms of this one, it's like in a way a bit of a clean slate, which of course teams like maybe Plymouth and Wayne Rooney will be going, right. That's the opening games of the season. Let's kick on from here. Let's get our win. And I think obviously coming into this one, both teams a bit of a balanced start to the season. How do you see this one going? A bit of a tough question, but coming into this game, how do you think it's going to go, Ben?
I think Oxford could hurt us a little bit. They seem to have started the season pretty well. Um, I watched them particularly against Coventry. They didn't destroy Coventry in terms of their attacking, but they sat back and defended really well for most of the game. It was only a mistake at the end that cost them. Um, and they were just able to be resilient and, you know, something to our detriment a couple of years ago, we concede and we go on to lose the game. Oxford came back into that game and looked like they were deserving of a point. And it's just they seem to have a good mentality. They've got a good
Hmm.
blend of youth and experience as well. For a promoted team, it's not got the most quality in the world, but then you wouldn't expect
Yeah.
it to. Um, I think depending on how Stoke approach this game, I think they'll probably go as attacking as they were against Argyle. Um, if Oxford remain resilient and defend well, they could easily get us on the counter attack like they did against Coventry. So yeah, this should not be seen as a walkover. Absolutely
No.
not.
No, I completely agree. I think when but we're running out of time. Don't worry, we won't be too long, I promise. When you obviously look at this one, it's obviously so easy to go. It's a newly promoted side. Surely we're going to dominate them or whatever. But their start to the season's been really, really solid. They've beat a Norwich side that have got some real quality, albeit, of course, the opening game of the season. But that that kind of cutting edge, that difference in the games, they've got with the likes of Mark Harris. I mean, I looked at it. Of course, he's 4 goals a season, obviously all coming consecutively. So hopefully we stop him from doing that and getting 5 goals and obviously consecutive league games. But you look at kind of, I think Des Buckingham's a real good manager. And I think a lot more people will talk about him if he has a good season. But I think even the signings they've made, I think the likes of Sariki Dembele is a good signing. I think they've got a good mix in there with, like you said, that kind of experienced. I like the look of Cameron Brannigan, who's also scored this season. I think this Oxford side are one that I think a lot of people obviously won't have talked about too much because you never know what you're going to get with a promoted side. But I definitely think that coming into this one, it could literally go either way, and it maybe is a case of who's going to take the game, who's going to want to win it. And I think with Oxford, their 2 wins in the league coming at home, you'd go, hang on, that home support, is that going to be the difference maker in this game? Because you look at our quality and the quality between the two sides, you'd say that we do have a slight, well, I'd say quite a bit of more quality on paper in our squad. But the likes of Mark Harris, you wouldn't have said would have opened this season with 4 goals in the league. So if he kicks on, then that is their difference maker right there. So for me, in terms of score prediction, and I'll come to you for that, Ben, in a min. I'd love to always say Stoke are going to win a game and get the 3 points because that's all we want. 3 points, get us up the table. Let's all be positive. But I think with Oxford winning their 2 games in the league at home, with the likes of Mark Harris, with that quality, I think it could be quite a tight game and not too much. So I'm going for a draw. I'm going for quite a tight 1-1 draw, maybe in the hope that both sides have their kind of have their difference, have their quality, but hopefully maybe Stoke go on and kick on and win it and get them 3 points that we've mentioned where they just scrape it. But I think draw maybe evens all, and it's just kind of solid for both sides. There's things to work on, but both sides both had that quality to, of course, get a goal and share the points. So looking at this one, Ben, how would you see the game going in terms of your score prediction?
I think Oxford are going to pull ahead first. Like we said, they've got their tails up and they've got the ability to hurt us. And I think they might do early on and nick an early goal and will put us on the back foot a little bit and they will have to defend. Having said that, we've been playing well recently. And I think the addition of Cannon is only going to help players like Manoff and Juno,
Hmm.
not only to express themselves, but also exploit the creative side of their game. It'll
Yeah,
give them a target to aim for, same as Kumas has. The balls from the players like Manuf and Juno and even Berger, they've been great, but it's because they've had someone to hit.
yeah.
And I think having Cannon will really help that. So, assuming that he starts, of course, I think we'll have enough firepower, and I think our mentality has changed recently. I think we can
Mhm.
come back from a setback, and I think we'll go on to win the game 2-1.
Yeah, yeah. But like I said, I mean, for me, I obviously doing the score predictions week in and week out. I don't want to always say we're going to win. As much as obviously we'll head into this, and when you watch the game, you'll go right. Stoke get the 3 points. Let's build from it. I do think that, especially with Oxford, the start of the season, I don't want to just go, oh, hang on, we beat Borough in the cup 5-0. Let's put loads past them. I don't think that'll. I think that's highly, highly unlikely. Moving on to in terms of the starting 11 and who you think who is going to be in this side. I think this is a really tough one. I said I was writing my notes on the train to Manchester, and I was going, this is really hard. You've got players that obviously might be in contention in terms of Michael Rose and Stevens coming back from injury. You've also then got Tatsuki Seko and Cannon, as you mentioned, who are also new signings, could then come in and come straight into the side. I was really struggling with it. I don't think I'll get this bang on, but I like the side that I've kind of guessed. Your starting 11, we'll go for a bit of a quick fire one. As I can see, it says 4 minutes remaining of recording time, which is putting the biggest panic on my face. But yeah, what would be your starting 11 predictions for this game?
For me, I think it'd be pretty much an unchanged lineup from Argyle, other than, of course, Ryan Myers no longer at the club, and Tom Cannon should be ready to start the game. So I think it'll be Johansson, Chamadou, Wilmot, Phillips, Bocat as the back five, and then you've got Berger, Moran, and Juno in midfield, and then you've got Manoff, Kumas, and Cannon up front. And I think that's perhaps only an improvement from the previous game. I would Cannon in for my, which hurts me because I am a bit of a Ryan Mai fan. But I must admit, for the way that I think Cannon will work in this team, I think that's an improvement.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. It's one of them where you look at the if there wasn't the international break, you look at the game after Plymouth and obviously predicting it now, you go, hang on, none of the players on that pitch give Schumacher a reason to be dropped. And I think all of them did their jobs well. But see, this is one where I was really struggling because with it being the international break, with us having quite a number of players that are away, albeit obviously in kind of the kind of academy setups of the international team, will that play a factor with players staying at the ground who haven't been called up? Will that then make these knocking on the door? So I've gone for a little bit different, but I am a big fan of Ashley Phillips, and the reason I'm not saying he will be in the team is purely because I don't know if he'll. I think he'll play tomorrow in the England under 20s game. I think 2 games on the bounce, and then obviously being asked to play against Oxford. Will that be too much? It might not be, and it'll be absolutely fine for him. But that's the only reason I'd say he'll come out. So for me, I've gone for Johansson in goal, with the back four, Bocat, Gibson, Wilmot, and Shamadou, and then of course playing out from the back. Obviously, Gibson left-footed, Wilmot right-footed, allows us to kind of play through that press and maybe play out from the back, which might work in our favour against quite a quick Oxford side. Who, in all fairness, Gibson and Wilmot will have a job on their hands with Mark Harris. In all fairness, I think that'll be their big task, and maybe having a more experienced head or a more experienced partnership might work better. But maybe the height of Phillips will be what kind of reduces Mark Harris from having that freedom. So it could be any of them lot. And then I've gone for Berger and Moran. I really like them too. And then Junho, Kumas, and Manu, with Junho playing in the 10. I think that them three, in all fairness, when all three can get going, and if they build that link up play throughout the season, could be a real key towards having quite a nice positive season. And then obviously leading the line, I've gone for Tom Cannon as well. So you look at that side, and obviously you'd say, well, Sam, you were just picking the players that are the top of the game. But for me, I think you look at that, and I think there's a good balance in the side. You've got players coming back from injury, obviously the likes of Seko, who could also come straight in, who's been on the training ground. I don't know, but I think that side it's a solid side that provides us with that real attack to threaten Oxford in a way, kind of short, not I don't want to say that word, kind of quiet and sorry, an Oxford atmosphere. So yeah, that's the team I'm going to go for. But yeah, I think when you look at this side, and especially when you look at that kind of front four in terms of Kumas, Junho, Manu, Cannon, all a very young side that obviously are have got the expectation of carrying us, but they've all got that real quality and just that kind of that creativity and that kind of confidence about them that they all know how good they are. It's just a matter of are they going to bring that to the game? And I think when you look at especially this side, and one thing about that is the age of the side and how it's a much younger side than what we've ever had before. I think that's just I think that brings up so much positivity and so much that it's like how Sunderland did, and they had still have a real young squad that are exciting the fans, and I think we're probably starting to build that and basing it off the summer window in terms of the age of the signings we made and the majority of them being younger. You'd say, well, you know what, that's a real good statement of intent. So looking at this one, Ben, and my final question of this match preview, in terms of your starting 11 or who you reckon will most definitely be in that side, who do you think is going to be the standout player, the player that Oxford fans need to know about?
It's typical because as you said, that front four is deadly. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go through process of elimination and say Juno's just not quite hit it yet for me. Don't be wrong, he's a fabulous player, but I think just he's had a slow start to the season. He was injured, of course, so he's not been able to have that much of an impact yet. I think it's still going to take a couple of games for him to get back up to speed.
Mm,
Cannon, for similar reasons, hasn't had much of a pre-season, so I'm going to say that he might even score, but he might not necessarily be the most dangerous player for us. And
yeah.
it's between Kumas and Manaf then in that case, and both are on fire, aren't they?
Yeah.
Um, it was Manaf previous games, so based on that logic alone, I'm going to go Kumas and say it's his turn to have a stormer. He's great. Like I say, I think it might be Manaf feeding him or Juno feeding him, but yeah, I'm going to say Kumas is going to be the one that Oxford really needs to look out for, and it'll be his turn to have half a dozen shots on target in this game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even the man who won from the Plymouth game, he scored that a very similar goal against Borough when he came on off the bench, cut inside and kind of scored from the near post in terms of the goalkeeper's near post. Then did that against Plymouth, and it's just superb, and it's so good to see that we've got a player like that that's got that confidence to right. I've not been able to take my other four chances. Give me another go, and that's the difference maker. So yeah, like you said, that kind of front four, you look at it and that's some real quality. But bit of a voice break there. Right
That
near
much
the end,
quality.
I know, yeah, clearly getting a bit too excited there, but I'm, I think it's a tough one. I've seen that Kumas, when this has been filmed, Wales are playing today, and that Kumas
Mhm.
is starting for Wales. So that's a real positive sign, and hopefully he doesn't get injured. I don't know. I didn't actually think about this beforehand, but I'm going to go for John Ho. And I completely understand where you're coming from. Of course, when you come back from injury, it's so difficult to then play like you were playing before in terms of having that freedom to be so confident and just be able to drive past players that, of course, Jono was doing last season. And I think you most definitely will carry on doing that this season. It is just a matter of when is it going to be. And the reason I'm saying now is I think that international break for him has come at a perfect time. As far as I'm aware, I don't think he was called up
No,
for
I
the
don't think he
national
was.
team. I don't think he was. So I think maybe being able to work in the training ground and get back up to fitness, maybe with a couple of the coaches, maybe he's gone right. You know what? I feel back. I feel ready now. And I think the way that Oxford play in terms of more of a two advanced midfielders, maybe it being the 1v1 in terms of John Ho against their kind of defensive minded midfielder. maybe if it is the likes of obviously Will Volk, something like that, you then go, you know what? That's it. You going up against Jono is a real tough challenge, especially when he's that kind of 100% sharpness, and he could absolutely be that for this game. So for me, I totally agree. I think Kumas and Manu, just absolute wonder players, and I hope they can continue that. But I just think Jono, maybe a different one. Maybe it is Moran, someone like that. It's about the midfield and who in the midfield is going to shine. But for me, I think Jono in that 10 in this side against Oxford could be the one. So until then, until Saturday, of course, filmed on Monday, I think we'll have this out on Wednesday. If it's any later, then I'll put this in that I've missed my deadline, and that Ben can go, you know what, Sam, I filmed this on Monday and you're not even getting it out. So hopefully this is out on Wednesday. Ben, thank you so much for coming on. It's been really good to have you on.
You're welcome, Bas. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been a real pleasure. And this time I'm able to get a second opinion, a different opinion to what I normally waffle on the channel. Of course, a different starting line of what we both went for. But we'll find out on Saturday, a 12:30 kickoff. So a bit of an early morning in terms of if you wake up late, not like me. Yep, definitely wake up early. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time.